Welcome back to this week's Black Flame forecast for August 24th through the 30th. Last week's reading was intensely personal. We had the moon reversed, the world, and the Ten of Stones. Something hidden was being revealed. A cycle was reaching completion, and we were being asked to recognize the wisdom we had gained through everything we had lived. This week's energy feels like the next movement of that story. Because once something changes within us, eventually the question becomes, what are we going to do with that change? This week I was drawn to pull cards from the Golden Future Oracle deck by Diana Cooper. I pulled 3 cards. When I put these 3 cards together, I kept hearing 3 words: clear, expand, connect. But underneath those 3 words is an even larger message. Your expansion is not only for you. Our first card is the Dragon's card. And immediately we are being called into something larger than ourselves. The guidance for this card speaks about dragons as healers, protectors, guardians, and beings that work with different elemental energies. The earth, fire, air, and water. Each dragon's clearing what needs to be cleared. Fire dragons burning through the transmutation, what is finished. Air dragons blowing away old energy and opening the mind. Water dragons carrying healing through the waters. But there is something in the guidance for this card that I think is more important than any individual interpretation of dragons. It says that this is a call to service, and that in turn changes the entire reading. Because there comes a point in spiritual development where everything cannot continue being about us. At first, maybe it needs to be. We heal, we learn boundaries, we reclaim our lives, we reclaim ourselves, we discover our gifts, we learn to trust our intuition, we clear old wounds, we remember who we are. There is nothing wrong with that, but eventually another question appears. What are you going to do with everything you have recovered? If you have learned how to hold light in dark places, where are you willing to carry it? If you've learned how to transmute pain, what will you create from it? If you've developed discernment, where will you use it? If you have a choice where you are being asked to speak, where will you speak? If you have medicine, where is that medicine needed? The Dragon's card isn't asking you to save the entire world. That's another trap entirely. It is asking you to stop believing that your spiritual development exists in isolation from everything around you. You affect the field you inhabit. Your choices affect other people. Your healing changes relationships. Your boundaries alter patterns. Your willingness to speak changes rooms. Your refusal to continue something can interrupt cycles that existed long before you arrived. Sometimes service is enormous. Sometimes service is incredibly ordinary. Sometimes it is creating something. Sometimes it is protecting something. Sometimes it's telling the truth. Sometimes it's refusing to participate in something harmful. Sometimes it is simply leaving a better place than you found it. The first card says participate. Don't ask what the universe is doing for you. Ask what you're doing with the life you've been given. And then the reading suddenly leaves Earth entirely. Our second card is Intergalactic Travel. And its message is to regard the stars with wonder. There is something I love about that word, wonder. Not certainty, not explanation, not proof, wonder. Human beings are extraordinarily uncomfortable with not knowing. We like categories, we like explanations, we like being able to say, this is what this means, this is what's possible, this is what's impossible, this is how reality works, and then every once in a while, life shows us something that doesn't fit inside the box. This card asks us to leave room for that. Whether you interpret intergalactic consciousness and the beings described within this oracle, literally, spiritually, symbolically, or somewhere in between, the invitation of the card is powerful. Do not mistake the boundaries of your understanding for the boundaries of existence. There are things you don't know yet. There are things none of us know yet. There are possibilities you haven't considered. There are experiences you haven't had. There are people you haven't met. There are parts of yourself you haven't encountered. There are ways of living you haven't imagined. There are doors you don't even know exist. And sometimes our greatest limitation isn't that the opportunity isn't available, it's that we've already decided what reality is allowed to look like. Wonder cracks that open. Wonder allows us to stand beneath the night sky and not immediately demand an explanation. Wonder says, "Show me what I haven't considered." And I think this card is asking us to become curious again. Where have you become so certain that you've stopped listening? Where have you decided something could never happen? Where have you confused your previous experience with a prophecy about your future? Where have you said, "That's just how I am, that's just how life works, people like me don't do that. I'm too old, it's too late, that isn't possible"? Be careful with those sentences. Sometimes we build our own cages out of conclusions. This week's second card says, "Look up. There is more beyond the horizon of what you currently know." But then our third card does something that I think is absolutely essential. Because after taking us into dragons, higher consciousness, stars, and the cosmos, it brings us home. Our final card is animals. Honor the animal kingdom. And I love that this card comes last, because there is a danger in spiritual work of becoming so focused on ascending, expanding, reaching higher dimensions, communicating with higher beings, opening portals, seeking enlightenment, and reaching toward the heavens that we forget where our feet are on earth. We can become fascinated with intelligence somewhere in the stars while failing to recognize intelligence surrounding us every single day. Animals communicate constantly, not necessarily in human language, but communication does not require human language. Anyone who has deeply loved an animal knows this. They read energy, they read bodies, they read patterns, they notice changes. They communicate through movement, sound, presence, behavior, attention, and relationship. Sometimes an animal knows you're upset before you've admitted it to yourself. Sometimes they refuse to leave your side. Sometimes they stare directly into something you can't see. Sometimes a particular species begins appearing repeatedly during a significant period of your life. And whether you interpret that spiritually or simply as an invitation to become more observant, the instruction remains useful. Pay attention. This card asks us to honor other forms of life rather than automatically positioning humanity above them. And I think that message becomes especially interesting directly after intergalactic travel, because we spend enormous amounts of energy wondering whether intelligent life exists somewhere else in the universe. Meanwhile, we are surrounded by intelligent life all around us. We simply don't always recognize intelligence when it doesn't look like ours. What if conscious expression itself expresses through forms we haven't learned to understand? What if communication has been happening all along and we've been listening for the wrong language? And what if becoming more spiritually conscious doesn't mean leaving the earth behind? What if it means becoming more capable of a relationship with it? Which takes us back to clear, expand, and connect. And that's what I see when I put all three cards together. The dragons is clear. Clear what is stagnant. Clear what no longer belongs. Transmute what has completed. Protect what matters. Use what you have learned in service of something beyond yourself. Then intergalactic travel. Expand. Look beyond your assumptions. Become curious again. Allow yourself to wonder. Stop assuming that what you currently understand is all there is to understand. Let the universe become mysterious again. And finally, animals, connect. Come back into your body. Come back into relationship. Come back to earth. Listen. Observe. Respect the living consciousness surrounding you, because expansion without connection can become escape. And I don't think we're being asked to escape. I think we're being asked to become more deeply present. There comes a point when awakening must become participation. You could spend years discovering yourself, healing yourself, protecting yourself, reclaiming yourself, remembering yourself. But eventually the flame asks, now what? What will you do with what you remember? The fire was never meant to illuminate only your own path. There are places around you still sitting in darkness. That does not mean you must rescue them. It does not mean you must carry everyone. It does not mean sacrificing yourself in the name of service. We've done enough of that. Service without sovereignty becomes martyrdom. That isn't what this is. This is conscious participation. Knowing where your energy belongs, knowing where it does not, knowing what you're capable of changing, knowing what isn't yours to carry, and being willing to act where your presence actually matters. The dragon reminds you that you carry fire. The stars remind you that reality is larger than the boundaries of your current understanding. And the animals remind you that none of that means anything if you become disconnected from the living world around you. Look towards the heavens, absolutely. Wonder about what exists beyond everything we know. Ask bigger questions, explore consciousness, explore mystery, explore possibility. But then come back, touch the earth, notice the wind, watch the animals, listen to the birds. Notice which creatures repeatedly cross your path. Look into the eyes of the animal who shares your home and recognize that another consciousness is looking back at you. Because perhaps the next evolution of consciousness isn't about becoming less earthly. Perhaps it is about finally understanding how sacred being earthly actually is. You were not placed here merely to transcend this world. You are part of it. And perhaps your expansion was never meant to carry you away from Earth. Perhaps it was meant to make you capable of loving her differently, protecting her differently, creating differently, serving differently, living differently. So this week, the black flame is asking, what needs to be cleared so your energy can move where it is actually needed? Where have the limits of your current understanding become the limits of what you believe is possible? What intelligence, wisdom, or communication around you have failed to recognize because it arrived in a form you weren't expecting? And perhaps the biggest question of all, what if your expansion isn't only for you? Clear the field, look toward the stars, then return to Earth with your eyes open. Clear, expand, connect. Until next time, walk with a black flame. This is Lilith.